It has been nearly 3 months since the death of American financier and alleged sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. His death ruled a suicide here in New York back in August.
Our next guest was tapped by Epstein's team to observe the autopsy and is here to reveal the findings from his investigation.
All right, joining us right now, former New York City medical examiner, Dr. Michael Baden. He's a forensic pathologist, Fox News contributor, and joins us right now for an exclusive interview. Dr. Baden, thanks for being here.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
When did you realize that the Epstein family needed help?
Well, I was asked by the brother, the next of kin, to be at the autopsy. And at the autopsy on day one, there were findings that were unusual for suicidal hanging and more consistent with ligature homicidal strangulation, which included...
And it was suggested at the time that he committed suicide by doing what?
By hanging. At the time, he was found allegedly hanging by a homemade ligature of sheets.
Are you saying you don't think it was suicide?
I think that the evidence points toward homicide rather than suicide.
Why?
Because there are multiple 3 fractures in the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, that are very unusual for suicide and more indicative of strangulation, homicidal strangulation.
Let's take a look at what the medical examiner stated. After careful review of all the investigative information, including complete autopsy findings, the determination on the death of Epstein is below. Cause, hanging, manner, suicide. You say that his fatal injuries are consistent with homicide?
More consistent with homicide. And in fact, at the time of the autopsy, the doctor doing the autopsy didn't think there was enough information to say suicide, so she put it pending further study. And then for some reason, and they want to know, the family wants to know why was it changed from pending further study to homicide afterwards.
So if you're there watching them perform this autopsy, you notice these 3 broken bones, and you believe it would be homicide. So that would mean another person would have gone into his cell, strangled him. Did he have any signs of trying to fight back?
Well, they took fingernail clippings to see if there's anybody else's DNA on it, and that hasn't been released. Neither has the information about whose DNA is on the ligature. A ligature was made out of torn strips of orange sheets, and whoever made it had to have a lot of DNA on it, and the brother's been asking that from day one.
So wait a second. So you're saying that whoever made it has to have a lot of DNA on it, and there was?
No, we don't even know if it was examined.
Could they? Right. So you're saying when you left the examination room, they weren't sure what happened.
That's right.
So what? You know this procedure. What happened in the interim to get this such a blunt conclusion?
Well, a week later, it was changed to homicide. The brother wants to know what did they get new in that week to make it homicide.
What's your answer to that?
We don't know. We don't know. It's 80 days now.
Right.
And the brother feels he's getting a runaround. And to add to it, there was a total breakdown in security. The video cameras didn't work. The guards went to sleep.
What about that guy who was in the cell with him earlier, where it was suggested that guy tried to kill him?
Well, he had a new roommate now because of a suicide watch, a different roommate. But that roommate was pulled away the day or 2 before, so that there was no roommate with him, no suicide watch, no security guards, no videotapes that were working. Was the FBI able to get some information from the videos?
I know that you were hired back in the 70s to do this as your job. You really investigated deaths in prisons after the big riot and all these prisoners died. So in your experience, what are the chances of him not being checked on for 3 hours, from 3:30 to 6:30 when they found his body, and the 2 prison guards falling asleep?
Extremely unlikely. I've never seen it in 50 years of investigating all deaths that occur in prisons in New York State. Never had 2 guards fall asleep at the same time. All the video doesn't work. And the issue would be, did somebody come in and cause his death?
Well, what about the suggestion you may be biased because you were hired by the family?
That's always a situation, except that Governor Rockefeller, after Attica in '71, set up a special board to look into all deaths in prisons in New York State, because the concern that police, medical examiners and guards were biased when inmates complained that deaths were being covered up, and we have a separate board that looks into all these deaths.
Dr. Baden, what I don't understand is if everybody wants the same thing, the truth, the brothers shouldn't be fighting anything. They should be interviewing you and saying, wait, tell me about what you have. Have people investigating this case prior to them ruling it a suicide contacted you?
Not at all.
None. Do you find that strange?
Yes. If the Attorney General is investigating the cause of death, as they're doing the security of this issue, in this issue, somebody should have been investigating everybody who had anything to do with the autopsy. Sure.
So if there was a prisoner that went in and strangled him, and the DNA is on that, whatever
ligature,
he used, the ligature, the sheets, the bed sheets, then wouldn't it be easy to track down who that person was?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the first thing. The medical examiner at the time of the first autopsy did swabs of all the clothing on him for DNA. But who had the ligature?
Well, who has that information? Why isn't that being released?
That's what the brother wants to know. That's why they asked me to come here.
So you're calling on the state to figure out whose DNA is on that?
Not the state, unfortunately. This is a federal prison, so the state has not. The FBI usually investigates, would be investigating it, and the brother wants to know, one, did the FBI get a hold of that ligature, and two, it only takes a couple of days to do the DNA. What's the results?
Dr. Baden, I know you're just somebody who looks at a situation, cut and dry. I'm looking at DNA, looking at hard facts. How important in your investigation and conclusion is his mindset prior to suicide, and the fact that he had plans afterwards and that he spent so much time with his lawyers the day before?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The great majority of people commit suicide give warning signs ahead. Now, one of the warning signs could have been the incident July 23rd when he said the roommate assaulted him and the guard said it was a suicide attempt. And they should have been watching him.
Sure.
They didn't watch him. According to the guards, according to his lawyers at that time, he was in good mood. He was hoping that he was still waiting for a decision whether he can get out on bail. That hadn't come yet.
Well, he had so many victims. I think the victims really deserve to know what happened.
You're absolutely right. There are a lot of things happened. But also the brother is concerned that if he was murdered, then other people who have information might be at risk and jeopardy.
Look, the heart doesn't go out with this guy. This guy seems like just a terrible person. Used his power and manipulation ability for evil means. I get it. But there are so many people who are implicated in his web of ugliness. You wonder if this plays a role. The powerful people that his antics affected and would have been affected had he lived.
You're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that the brother thinks as well. If they think he has information that his life would be in jeopardy.
What does the brother tell you? What does he think happened?
He thinks he wants to find the answer to it, and he thinks that his brother wasn't the type to commit suicide, but he'd like to get the information that he hasn't been able to get so far.
How hard is it to commit suicide in prison?
Very easy, but first, in this situation, if he took the sheets and stripped it, it would have taken a good half hour or hour to make the ligature, then to go up there. Once you're hanging, it's about 5 minutes or so that you can be near dead.
Dr. Baden, though, if the supposition is that it was a homicide, that would mean cops were in on it. Who opened the door, who moved the cameras, all of that stuff.
Was it someone on the outside, or was it an inside job?
That's right. That's a terrible allegation.
Why were the two guards asleep? In 50 years of looking at deaths in New York State, and occasionally a guard falls asleep. Never are two guards at the same time. The cell, the camera in the cell watching didn't work. The camera in the hallway to see if anybody came in and out of his cell didn't work. This is bizarre. That his roommate was taken away, so he's all by himself. Suicide watch was taken away. So, yeah, the issue you bring up has to be investigated. Doesn't mean that this was a homicide, but certainly it deserves investigation. And the brother's concerned there is no investigation.
Have you ever seen anyone that committed suicide and was hanging themselves with those 3 broken bones?
No. Hanging does not cause these broken bones, and homicide does. Usually 2 bones, even 3, is a huge amount of pressure was applied.
Okay, how different is all this for anyone, let alone a high-profile prison?
There were 800 other people in the correction facility, and most of them would have liked him to get their hands on him. One, because he had sexual things. Two, because to make a name for themselves. Three, because somebody could put him up to it. You're right, though. A number of people had to be involved if this is a homicide.
Okay, Dr. Baden, thank you very much. He just said that the fatal injuries are consistent with homicide, and you've also called on the feds to figure out whose DNA is on that thing that he hung himself with, if he hung himself. Dr. Baden, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot more on this topic on foxnews.com. Check it out right now.